When the truth about the affair came out, the devastation was immediate and all-encompassing. His wife, who had stood by him through every storm in their marriage, was shattered. Imagine finding out the person you trusted most had been lying to you for years. She described the pain as feeling like someone had pulled the rug out from under her entire world. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete dismantling of everything she thought she knew about her life. She had spent years building what she believed was a strong, happy marriage, only to discover that it had cracks she never saw coming. She couldn't stop replaying the moments in her mind. The times he came home late, the times he seemed distracted at family dinners, the times he told her he was working but maybe, just maybe, he wasn't. And the kids. Oh, the kids. They were stuck in the middle of this emotional hurricane. They loved their father. They had always looked up to him as a provider, a role model. But how do you reconcile that with the knowledge that he's the one who caused so much hurt? One of the kids, the eldest daughter, reportedly said, "I don't even know who you are anymore." Can you imagine hearing that from your own child? The youngest, too young to fully understand the gravity of the situation, asked heartbreaking questions. Why is mommy crying so much? Did daddy do something bad? How do you explain something like this to a child? How do you make them feel safe when the very foundation of their family has been shaken? Then there was the tension in the house. Oh, the unbearable tension. Every room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next argument, the next explosion. Mealtimes, once filled with laughter and conversation, turned into silent, awkward affairs. The family felt like strangers to each other, each member retreating into their own world of pain and confusion. The wife's emotions swung wildly between heartbreak and rage. One moment, she was sobbing uncontrollably, mourning the life she thought she had. The next, she was furious, yelling things like, "How could you do this to me? To us?" And who could blame her? She had given this man everything, her trust, her loyalty, her love, and he had thrown it all away for what? A fleeting moment of excitement. She began to question everything about their relationship. Was their love ever real? How many other secrets had he kept from her? Every kind word, every romantic moment, now felt like a cruel joke. She even found herself questioning her own worth, wondering if she wasn't enough for him. The betrayal wasn't just a blow to her heart, it was an attack on her identity. And let's talk about the husband. He wasn't off the hook. Not even close. He found himself in the hot seat, facing the consequences of his actions in a way he never anticipated. He tried to defend himself, saying things like, "It wasn't about you," or "I made a mistake." But how do you explain away 5 years of deceit? Every excuse he made only seemed to dig him deeper into the hole he had created. The guilt consumed him. He could see the pain he had caused, etched into the faces of the people he loved most. But guilt doesn't erase the damage. He tried to apologize, but words felt hollow. He tried to fix things, but some wounds can't be patched up so easily. Meanwhile, the housekeeper, the third person in this tangled web, was dealing with her own set of emotions. She had never intended to hurt anyone, but she couldn't deny her role in the affair. The shame was overwhelming. She left the family's employment shortly after the truth came out, but the echoes of her presence lingered in the house, a constant reminder of the betrayal. The community, too, wasn't kind. Gossip spread like wildfire. Friends, neighbors, even distant relatives. They all had opinions, and none of them were shy about sharing them. The wife couldn't go to the grocery store without feeling the weight of judgmental stares. The kids faced whispers and side-eyes at school. The scandal wasn't just a private family issue anymore. It had become public property. The wife found herself stuck between two impossible choices: stay and try to rebuild what had been broken, or leave and start over. Either way, the road ahead looked bleak. If she stayed, she would have to learn to trust him again, a monumental task. If she left, she would have to navigate life as a single parent, all while dealing with her own emotional scars. The kids, too, had to make their own adjustments. Some distanced themselves from their father, unable to forgive him. Others clung to him, desperate to hold on to the family they once knew. But no matter how they reacted, one thing was clear. The family would never be the same again. The affair wasn't just a betrayal. It was a bombshell that obliterated their world. Trust was gone. Innocence was lost. And the road to healing. It was long, painful, and uncertain. This expanded section aims to capture the emotional roller coaster and depth of the fallout while keeping the tone dynamic and engaging. To truly understand how this affair came to be, we have to go back to the beginning. The family was wealthy, successful, and, at least from the outside, seemed like they had it all. They lived in a sprawling estate, hosted glamorous parties, and were admired by everyone around them. But as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. Behind those gilded walls, cracks were forming in the foundation of their picture-perfect life. The rich man, let's call him Andrew, was in his 40s and had worked tirelessly to build his business empire. But with success came immense pressure. He was constantly juggling meetings, deadlines, and the relentless demands of his industry. At home, he often felt like a stranger, disconnected from his wife, who was equally busy with charity events, social obligations, and raising their children. They were two ships passing in the night, living parallel lives but rarely intersecting. Enter Maria, the housekeeper. She was hired through an agency to help maintain their luxurious home. Maria was young, in her late 20s, with a warm smile and a kind demeanor. She wasn't just good at her job. She went above and beyond, always making sure everything was perfect for the family. She had a way of noticing the little things. A fresh bouquet of flowers in the kitchen, a perfectly folded stack of laundry, a comforting word when someone seemed down. Andrew began to notice Maria's attentiveness, and slowly, an unusual connection began to form. It started innocently enough. Simple conversations in the kitchen while she prepared his coffee. She'd ask how his day was going, and he found himself opening up in ways he hadn't with anyone else, not even his wife. She listened, really listened. And for a man who felt invisible in his own home, that meant everything. At the time, Andrew was struggling. His business had hit a rough patch, and the stress was taking a toll. He felt like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and Maria's presence became a source of comfort. She didn't judge him or demand anything from him. She was just there. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Andrew came home to find Maria cleaning up in the living room. The house was quiet. His wife and kids were out. He sat down and let out a deep sigh. Maria, noticing his exhaustion, brought him a cup of tea. "You look like you've had a rough day," she said softly. And in that moment something shifted. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something either of them had set out to do. But that night their conversation lingered. They talked about life, dreams, and disappointments. For the first time in a long time, Andrew felt seen. And Maria? She was falling into something she knew was dangerous but couldn't seem to resist. Their connection deepened over time. Little moments turned into stolen glances, and those glances turned into something more. They both knew it was wrong. Maria especially. She struggled with guilt every single day. She wasn't just betraying her boss's wife. She was betraying her own moral compass. Maria would tell herself, "This can't go on. I need to stop." But then Andrew would walk into the room, looking lost, vulnerable, and utterly human, and her resolve would crumble. She wasn't just falling for her boss. She was falling for the idea of saving him. For Andrew, the affair was an escape. It wasn't that he didn't love his wife. At least, that's what he told himself. But somewhere along the way, their marriage had lost its spark. They no longer laughed together or shared their dreams. His wife was always busy, always preoccupied, and he felt like he had been relegated to the background of her life. Maria, on the other hand, made him feel alive. She reminded him of who he used to be before the stress of life wore him down. He knew it was wrong, but he justified it by telling himself he wasn't hurting anyone. After all, it wasn't like his wife knew. But secrets have a way of festering. As the affair continued, both Andrew and Maria started to feel the strain. Maria began withdrawing from the rest of the household, avoiding the wife and children whenever possible. She couldn't look them in the eye without feeling a pang of guilt. Andrew, meanwhile, became more distant from his family. He was constantly distracted, his mind consumed by the double life he was leading. It wasn't just the emotional toll, it was the logistical nightmare of keeping the affair hidden. Text messages had to be deleted, conversations had to be whispered, and every interaction carried the risk of exposure. The tension was palpable, and both Andrew and Maria knew it was only a matter of time before their secret unraveled. What made it even more complicated was that Maria wasn't just an employee anymore. She had become a part of the family's life in ways they didn't even realize. The kids adored her, often running to her for comfort or help. The wife trusted her implicitly, praising her for her dedication and hard work. And yet, under the surface, the affair was like a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. Every stolen moment, every hidden touch, brought them closer to the edge. Neither Andrew nor Maria knew how or when it would end, but deep down, they both knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. The affair wasn't just about lust or attraction. It was a tangled web of emotions, unmet needs, and poor decisions. It was a collision of two people searching for something they felt was missing in their lives, even if it meant destroying everything in their path. This expanded section captures the complexity of the affair, showing how it unfolded and delving into the emotions, motivations, and consequences for both parties. It keeps the narrative engaging and layered, inviting the audience to feel the tension and turmoil. To understand how everything spiraled so catastrophically, we have to step back, way back, to when the cracks first began to form. The family, from the outside, was the epitome of success. Big house, fancy cars, luxury vacations, they had it all. But behind those perfectly manicured hedges and glistening windows was a family losing touch with one another. The husband, let's call him Michael, was a self-made millionaire. He worked endlessly to build his business empire, pouring in 12-hour days and often working weekends. To the world, he was a visionary, a trailblazer who defied odds to succeed. But at home, he was distant, a shadow in his own home. His wife, Sarah, had her own challenges, managing the house, raising 2 children, and maintaining a social life that seemed more obligatory than joyful. The problem wasn't love. It was the lack of connection. Somewhere between the corporate meetings and PTA events, they stopped communicating. Conversations became transactional. Did you pay the school fees? Can you pick up milk? And intimacy, that had long evaporated, replaced by cold, polite smiles and distant goodnights. Enter Elena, a young, spirited housekeeper hired to bring order to the chaos of their sprawling estate. She was everything the house needed, efficient, attentive, and warm. But what no one expected, not even Elena herself, was how much of an emotional presence she would become in Michael's life. It started innocently, as these things often do. One day, Michael came home late, shoulders heavy with stress, and found Elena still cleaning in the kitchen. She looked up, startled, and said, "Long day." He nodded, too exhausted to speak, and she handed him a cup of tea. That simple gesture, so small, so human, felt like a lifeline. "Thank you," he murmured. "You look like you needed it," she replied with a soft smile. From then on, their interactions became a little longer, a little warmer. She'd ask about his work. He'd ask about her family back home. They shared stories. Nothing too personal at first, just enough to feel connected. But then the small talk turned into something deeper. Michael found himself venting about the pressures of work, the loneliness of success, and even the growing distance in his marriage. Elena listened, truly listened, in a way he hadn't experienced in years. And Elena, she knew this was dangerous territory. She'd seen the photos of Michael's family framed on the walls. She knew the life he belonged to, the one she was merely hired to maintain. But she couldn't help herself. He wasn't just her employer. He was someone who saw her as more than the woman who scrubbed the floors. As days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger. The moments they shared were fleeting but charged. An accidental brush of hands as she handed him a file he forgot on the counter, a shared laugh over an inside joke. One fateful evening, everything changed. Michael came home early and Sarah and the kids were out. He found Elena in the library, organizing books that no one had touched in years. She looked up, surprised, as he walked in. "Taking on extra work, I see," he said, trying to lighten the mood. "Just trying to make the place shine," she replied, her voice tinged with nervousness. Talk. What started as a casual conversation stretched late into the night. The dim lighting, the quiet of the house, the raw honesty. It was a dangerous combination. Michael admitted how lost he felt, how he missed feeling alive. And Elena, against her better judgment, admitted that she saw him differently. More human, more vulnerable, more real. The kiss was impulsive. Neither planned it, neither stopped it. In that moment, the weight of guilt, loyalty, and morality was drowned out by a tidal wave of desire. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Elena oscillated between euphoria and crushing guilt. How could she? She wasn't just betraying Sarah but the trust of a family that had welcomed her into their home. She tried to distance herself, but Michael wouldn't let go. He assured her it wasn't just lust. It was something deeper, something he couldn't ignore. For Michael, Elena represented everything he felt was missing in his life. Warmth, understanding, excitement. But for Elena, she was torn. Torn between the undeniable chemistry they shared and the reality that she was playing with fire. The affair, while passionate, was anything but easy. Every stolen moment was laced with paranoia. Text messages had to be deleted immediately. Conversations had to be whispered. And every time Elena interacted with Sarah or the children, she felt like a fraud. The turning point came when Sarah began to notice Michael's behavior. He was distracted. His phone always turned face down on the table. He started coming home earlier, but his mind seemed miles away. Sarah wasn't naive. She could feel the distance widening. And Elena, the guilt was consuming her. She tried to quit, even submitting a resignation letter, but Michael tore it up. "Don't leave," he pleaded. "I need you." But did he need her, or did he just need an escape? As the affair progressed, the web of lies grew more tangled. Elena became increasingly withdrawn, avoiding eye contact with Sarah, dodging conversations with the kids. Michael, on the other hand, became more reckless. He stopped caring about the signs he was leaving behind, the faint trace of perfume on his shirt, the lingering gazes between him and Elena. The affair wasn't just about lust or love. It was about two people searching for meaning, for connection, in all the wrong places. And while it gave them fleeting moments of happiness, it was a ticking time bomb that neither of them could defuse. Little did they know, the explosion was just around the corner. This extended section dives deeper into the affair's emotional complexity, portraying its build-up in a way that's both engaging and human. It captures the tension, passion, and inner conflict with a realistic tone, keeping viewers on the edge of their seats. The day everything came crashing down was deceptively ordinary. Sarah had planned a quiet dinner for the family, one of those rare evenings where everyone could sit around the table, share stories, and try to rekindle what felt like a fading connection. She had spent the afternoon in the kitchen, preparing Michael's favorite dishes, hoping this simple gesture would spark a glimmer of the man she used to know. But Michael, he was distracted. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Elena, cryptic texts about their last encounter and whispers of uncertainty. "We can't keep doing this," one message read. His heart pounded as he stared at the screen, the weight of guilt and desire colliding violently in his chest. The dinner started awkwardly. Sarah tried to engage the kids, asking about school, sports, anything to fill the silence. Michael nodded absent-mindedly, barely contributing. Sarah's eyes darted to him repeatedly, searching for the husband she once knew, the man who used to make her laugh until her sides ached. But it wasn't until Michael's phone buzzed again, this time louder, breaking the fragile atmosphere, that the evening took a sharp turn. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Are you going to get that?" she asked, her voice tinged with an edge she didn't intend. Michael froze. "It's just work," he muttered, quickly silencing the device and shoving it into his pocket. But Sarah wasn't buying it. Something had been off for weeks. Months even. She had ignored the signs, convincing herself that it was just stress or the natural ebb and flow of marriage. But this was different. Work, she repeated, her voice rising. It's 8 p.m., Michael. Who's texting you from work? The room fell silent. The kids looked up, sensing the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface. Sarah, not now, Michael said firmly, his eyes pleading with her to let it go. But Sarah wasn't about to back down. Not this time. The years of feeling neglected, the sleepless nights spent wondering where they had gone wrong, it all came bubbling to the surface. Who is it? She demanded, her voice shaking. Michael, look me in the eye and tell me who keeps texting you. Michael's face flushed with panic. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind 1,000 times, imagining how he might explain it all, how he might somehow soften the blow. But now that it was here, he had nothing. It's no one, he stammered, looking anywhere but at her. No one. Sarah's voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. Don't insult me, Michael. I'm not stupid. Who is she? And then, like a dam breaking, the truth spilled out. Not in a carefully constructed explanation, but in a messy, desperate confession. It's Elena, he blurted, his voice barely above a whisper. It's been going on for a while. For a moment the world seemed to stop. Sarah stared at him, her face a mixture of disbelief and devastation. The kids looked between their parents, confused and frightened, as the weight of Michael's words hung in the air. Elena, Sarah finally said, her voice trembling. Our housekeeper. The woman I trusted in my home. Around my children. Michael tried to speak, to offer some kind of explanation, but Sarah cut him off. How long, Michael? How long have you been betraying me? Michael hesitated, knowing that no answer would lessen the blow. 6 months, he admitted. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deception, and betrayal. Sarah's knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. You've been sitting across from me, sleeping next to me, and lying to my face for 6 months. She screamed, her voice raw with pain. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? Michael reached out, desperate to comfort her, but she recoiled as if his touch burned. Don't you dare, she spat, her tears now flowing freely. You don't get to play the victim here, Michael. You destroyed us. You destroyed me. And then, as if on cue, the front door opened. Elena stepped in, holding a bag of groceries she had picked up after running errands. She froze, instantly sensing the storm she had walked into. Sarah turned to her, her eyes blazing with fury. You, she said, her voice dripping with venom. How dare you walk into this house after what you've done? Elena looked at Michael, then back at Sarah, her face pale. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Sorry. Sarah laughed bitterly. You think sorry fixes this? You think sorry erases the months of lies, the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering why my husband was slipping away from me? Elena tried to speak, but Sarah wouldn't let her. Get out, she said, pointing to the door. Get out of my house and don't ever come back. Michael tried to intervene, but Sarah turned on him. And you, she said, her voice breaking. You don't get to talk your way out of this. You've ruined everything, Michael. Everything. The kids were crying now, the reality of their family's fracture sinking in. Michael stood there, helpless, as Sarah stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. That night, Michael sat alone in the dark, replaying the scene over and over in his mind. He had thought he could handle it, thought he could compartmentalize his life. But now, he was left with nothing but the wreckage of his choices. And Sarah? She spent the night in their bedroom, sobbing into her pillow, mourning the life she thought she had, the husband she thought she knew. This was the moment everything changed, a confrontation that left no one unscathed. And from that point on, their lives would never be the same. This expanded climax captures the raw emotions of betrayal, guilt, and devastation in vivid detail, drawing viewers into the heart of the story and making them feel every painful moment. 5 years later, the scars of that night still linger. Michael lost the family he once took for granted, left to reflect on the choices that shattered their lives. Sarah found strength in her pain, rebuilding herself piece by piece, but trust? It's a fragile thing she may never fully regain. The children, caught in the crossfire, carry the weight of a fractured home. The affair wasn't just a mistake, it was a catalyst for heartbreak, growth, and irrevocable change. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a reminder of how fragile love and loyalty can truly be. What would you do